Welcome to the Spinning Back Click, where each week on MMA Junkie we take a quick spin through the latest headlines in mixed martial arts. I'm back in the driver's seat after a week away. I've got Gorgeous George and Goals from MMA Junkie Radio on the clock, so let's just get right into it. Listen, guys, his fight is still more than a week away, but Conor McGregor, no question about it, already grabbing headlines. He released an interview through the MacLife.com, and in it, Conor said he's chasing after both the lightweight and the welterweight titles in his 2020 season. I want to ask you guys, is this pure bravado, or is he being honest in his intentions and thinks that he can get this done? Let's put 3 minutes on the clock. George, go.
All right, yeah, he's playing catch-up because for like 3 years, he really hasn't done much the way Conor's used to doing, you know, being at the top, wearing the gold, like which is what put him on the map. You know, he was the first champ simultaneous. He wants to get back to that status, and so what he's doing is he's laying out all these possibilities, just like those call-outs in 2019. Masvidal, Pettis got one, Gaethje got one, Cowboy got one. Along the way, feeling things out. The guy's a master at laying the foundation. But I'll tell you what, here's what makes him genius is media and fans gravitate to him, and that's why he's easy to promote, and that's why he sells out, and that's why he makes a ton of money, because he does give you an outlook. He gets you excited. It's like me going to you saying, hey, Cowboys, can you go all the way in August? You'd be saying, yeah, man, we can win the Super Bowl. But if you tell me, look, we're just concentrating on the opening weekend, and then we're going to worry about week 2 and week 3, I mean, I'd probably go to the next guy. You know what I mean? Conor is special like that.
Yeah, you know, you're right about that. You said a couple things I really believe. I mean, listen, his self-confidence is on another level. I honestly do believe he thinks he can beat anybody in all those divisions, but he does such a good job of planting that seed, right, of getting things ready for the future and giving himself options. So let me ask you, Goes, I mean, considering that he thinks he probably could do this, and listen, his star power dictates that he can basically fight anybody that he wants, let's be realistic about it. What are the chances that he could win one or even both of those belts, like he's saying, by year's end?
Very unrealistic. Come on, guys. We got to get back down to earth here. Like, I know the guy has said some pretty crazy things at some point. Trust me, when he said I'm going to box Floyd Mayweather, I was the first one to say that ain't happening, and sure enough, it happened. This time I'm going to say it. This ain't happening. And it ain't happening because he can't make it happen. It just doesn't work with the timetables. Let's do the math here. I mean, it's good. He gets one in early. All right, that's nice. But then you have to have Khabib and Tony play out. Let's just say Khabib wins that fight. And don't forget, you got to get past Cerrone, Conor. Don't forget about that. Let's say Khabib wins his fight. We know what he does every year with Ramadan, right? That puts you even later in the year. Let's say that match gets put together ASAP. Say Conor wins it. Are you telling me they're not going to do an immediate rematch? They probably will. Where does that put him at that point? What about poor Justin Gaethje? Come on, guys. It just can't happen. Conor, you bit off too much here.
I got to agree with that. I mean, look, you know, maybe that's not what everybody wants to hear, but I think you're keeping it real there, right? I mean, one or the other, maybe he could get there. I mean, when I look at lightweight, that does seem possible to me. I mean, right, Dana White's already kind of laying the groundwork. I mean, it's a hugely marketable fight for him to face Khabib, especially if Khabib's able to get by Tony Ferguson.
BMF title. BMF is the title.
Well, BMF
maybe that.
Well, maybe that one. I was going to say, I'm not even sure Khabib wants that fight. I don't think he's a man of principle. I don't think he cares about the money. So, and then welterweight. No disrespect. I just think that's a different size human being, man. And I don't even know that it's the most marketable out there. So, but you know what? I like hearing this Conor McGregor back. I like hearing this guy that's trying to stir things up and make things happen. So,
yeah.
All right, meanwhile, the marketing for UFC 246 is in full swing right now. We've seen heavy commercials in rotation on ESPN and ABC during, like, this major sports, the NFL, that sort of thing. But here's the interesting thing about it. Not one mention of Donald Cerrone whatsoever. It's all about Conor's back, Conor's back, Conor's back. I just wonder, is this a mistake at all on ESPN's part, on the UFC's part, and does it remind you of all? Remember when Ronda Rousey came back and it was all about Ronda Rousey? Oh, but oh, by the way, she was facing Amanda Nunes at the time. So, Goes, is this a good idea, bad idea? Does it matter? You tell me. 2 minutes on the clock.
You know, I totally understand that. That's a great comparison. I remember when all that went down. If you see when they've been playing these things, it's been during pro football, there's hockey going on, there's basketball. You're fighting for people's attention right now, sports fans. They only have so much time to get out and do things. I would sell the fight, not the individual, really, when you think about it, especially pro football. I mean, if you look at the couch, they probably have a beer. A lot of them have a cowboy hat, a steak. What does that remind you of? Donald Cerrone, one of the easiest guys to sell. Why not put a guy that everybody can relate to and say, wait, I know Conor McGregor, but this dude's like this and he's doing that? I'm in.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, I would assume that, of course, yes, you want to push Conor McGregor. I mean, ESPN is saying it. This is his debut on ESPN Plus. They're ready to cash that big Conor McGregor check. I get it. But I don't know, man. Don't you want to set up the fight a little bit so that, let's say Cowboy does win, which, oh, by the way, there's a real possibility he could win this fight, that at least you still got a little play back and forth. I don't know. What do you take out of this marketing?
Yeah, I think they dropped the ball. He's an easy guy to market. He's got the bonuses. He's got the hat. He's got KOs. He's got highlights. You can go back to the WEC. He's got plenty in the UFC. The man has put in some work in the UFC. How hard is it for them to say, but standing in his way? And all of a sudden the dude's on a horse with a rope. I mean, spend 10 seconds on him, 20 seconds. There's got to be a little bit of an allotted time to show you that Conor's just not going in there against a Tijuana taxi driver, right? Or a bum or whatever you want to call him. He's going in there against a legit opponent. Market that guy as well. I get most of the stakes go towards Conor. That's just the way the world we live in, but I still feel like they dropped the ball a little bit. Cerrone's the man, and he needs to get some respect here.
Especially, too, when it's such an easy character to sell. Like, I mean, the Cowboy has
simple.
The gunslinger. I mean, you could be as cliched as you want.
Exactly.
There's a character already there. It's not like somebody you got to pretend is exciting and interesting when they're not. So I don't get that. There's still time. We'll see what happens next, but it's been interesting. All right, a big moment in Conor McGregor's career, to say the least, man. I mean, we're all excited about this, but there's another man, and you mentioned him earlier, who will be greatly affected by what happens, I would think, and that is Justin Gaethje. Now, a lot of people believe he's the #1 contender, even though he's kind of getting passed over already by UFC President Dana White. So I wonder, Gaethje has come out and said, look, the right play for me is to be in the co-main event slot at UFC 249 in April. He's saying, listen, this thing with Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov has fallen out a lot. Maybe I could slip in, that sort of thing. I don't know. I hate hearing him have to make himself a backup plan, but at the same time, there is some practicality to it. So what do you think? Is this the right play for him, George? 2 minutes.
Yes, if my face goes blue, it's not because I'm about to pass out. It's because I've said this, I'm blue in the face. Always be on the timeline of the champion. I think it helps out because a lot of times you can be like that understudy that steps in if something happens. I'm not trying to jinx the fight. You know what's happened with Khabib and Tony over the years. But you're just part of that whole, whether you're on a dais or whether you're just part of that whole week. Khabib said this, Tony said this, Justin, react, back and forth. I mean, there's a big spotlight on a division. It's important to be there. Justin Gaethje realized this a little bit too late, but, by that I mean Conor's already kind of like in the pole position if he wins over Cerrone to face the winner, Khabib and Tony. But it's not too late to get on the same card and still create some storylines, some availability, because we don't know how these guys are going to come out of this with injuries, suspensions, or anything like that. The X's and O's is the most important thing, and I think him versus Islam Makhachev, who's looking for an opponent, is the perfect co-main event for Brooklyn, New York.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that play. I kind of like that a lot. So it's a little further down the rankings, but then you got the ties in with Khabib Nurmagomedov as well. Listen, I mean, again, I hate for Gaethje to have to slot himself in as a backup option, but you said it too, right? I mean, Ramadan is coming up, and that means Khabib Nurmagomedov is out for a little while, so it is kind of now or never, right? I mean, are there any other options that you see on the table, or is this the play?
I think maybe like a good name would be someone like Kevin Lee. I mean, the thing about Justin Gaethje is he fears nobody. It has nothing to do with fear. I think it had to do with respect. I think it really bothered him that he was being passed up that way. But now he has very few plays left. Just make the money. You only have your youth so long. Make as much money as you can. Let's be honest, man. He could be facing Godzilla in that co-main event. It won't matter. If the UFC wants Conor to fight, they're going to make that happen. So just make the money while you can.
Yeah, not a bad idea. And as well, I kind of like the attitude. You know what I mean? At least you're a little bit upset at the UFC, but you're not poking the bear too much. You're saying, hey, listen, I'll go about it my own way, and I'll still be there. So we'll see what happens. I like the idea. I like that Makhachev play, man. I hadn't even thought about that. All right, listen, PFL wrapped up at the end of the year. They had the big finals there. And listen, their second season is in the books. You got a couple of two-time winners there. You've got Kayla Harrison, who made a big splash as well. But, man, there's no question, man. This is a crowded MMA landscape out there. So as far as what they can do to kind of move forward, to gain steam, to keep getting a foothold, what do you guys think? You got any recommendations? Goes, let's start with you. 2 minutes.
Yeah, you have to go out there and you have to sign some talent. But, look, PFL, it's domestic. They don't leave this country. So sign some domestic talent. Sign good fighters, but people who are good behind the mic as well that can help promote some of these fights. And as far as your champions from the previous season, I mean, you got two that have won twice, $2 million. You got to sign some people with those skill sets to challenge those individuals. Because if we're going into another season where we think Lance Palmer is a lock, I mean, come on, give us a wrestler. Give us somebody that can challenge him. Sign some good talent. Make sure they're good behind the mic and they can promote the fight, because I think that's what they need right now at this point. Promotion as well as results in the cage.
Well, it's funny. I mean, you say like, hey, basically sign more American fighters. And you hate to say like, oh, I mean, I get it. The sport exists everywhere in the world, but you're right. I mean, they don't travel anywhere else. So they are an American-based company. So it's not a bad idea, and I hope that doesn't sound terrible. But I mean,
look at Brendan Luck's name, right? He's not from the States, but he can talk, and he's done a good job so far.
Yep, I agree. What about you, George? You got any recommendations? I know it's a tough business out there, but what can they do to keep gaining some steam?
There really is something to the words former UFC veteran, former Bellator veteran. I think back to season 6 of The Ultimate Fighter. Why did we get excited, guys? It was fighters that had been in the UFC that were getting a second chance. But we were excited because we were already invested in those fighters. We liked Lytle and Sarah and some of the other ones that were there. So we were rooting for them. We sat there and watched to see which one fighter would make it all the way to GSP. And so there's nothing wrong with it being a fighter who was fought in the UFC before and either stopped competing there because of the contract expired or maybe they got cut or whatever. PFL has to understand it's UFC at the top, and then after that, it's the next series of promotions like Bellator, PFL 1 Championship. They are going to get some of those fighters. But there's nothing wrong with that because those are the ones that fans tune in on. They're on ESPN too. It could be big for them in season 3, but we need more, like what Goz said.
Yeah, one quickly too, I would say spend a little more time talking about the stories of how those $1 million paychecks change lives, man. We talk about stories, man. They're fighting for these big stakes. I would like to see a little bit more video and that sort of stuff on showing like, man, this changed my life, and kind of market yourself that way. So, all right, so let's go to the other one, right? We're talking about the crowded MMA landscape. You got Bellator out there. They also wrapped up their season with, I don't know, man, a pretty cool little dual event series in Japan, which was pretty historic. We usually don't see organizations working together, but they're very clearly the #2 brand in the sport, and it might be tough to ever overtake the UFC, but they can still keep improving, right? They can still keep getting better. So let's start with you, George. 2 minutes on the clock. What can Bellator do to keep improving?
Believe it or not, less shows. I know last week Goz was saying more shows. I want to see less shows, and I want to see more stacked cards. I think back to Strikeforce. I think they used to do 6 on a bad year, 8 on a good year, but we all got jacked for it. Why? Because the UFC occupies about 40 to 42 weeks a year. There's 52 weeks in the season. Simple math here. Subtract what's left. There's 10 free weekends for us to enjoy another brand, and I think that's where Bellator could shine.
So you go the opposite some way. You say more shows.
Well, my argument was make more shows, but make it more quality. You know what I'm saying? Like, enough with the legends already. Too much money is being given to the legends, and they're just not performing in the cage. That money that you take to give all those legends, you could probably sprinkle it and get some B-level, C-level talent to help fill out those cards. I want to see a quality main event and a co-main. And George, I'll meet you halfway. Whether it's more cards or less cards, how about I just want to know where the card's going to be. How can I watch it?
The Zone,
Make
Paramount, that
dummies.
needs to be sorted out
Let
as well.
us know that.
I was going to say, that's #1 on my suggestion list. Is these events that they got where it's 3 different events, and one's a European event, and one's a numbered event, and then there's a break and a tape delay. That's got to go. The other thing is, I'll say, man, I think they got to get off Paramount, man. No disrespect to Paramount as a network as a whole, but when you're the only sports property on there, and there's no opportunity for shoulder programming, I mean, countdowns and reality shows and all that, I think that's too much. Dual event weeks, man. Even the UFC had to step back and say that was a mistake, right? I mean, I think it's already such a crowded landscape out there, and then you're competing against yourself. You're burying the fighters that fought on Friday because by Saturday rolls around, you've already got too many stories to tell. I think that's too much. And listen, otherwise, they're doing good. The talent's developing. Look at guys like A.J. McKee. I understand people complain that they've been slow played, but they're here now. You know what I mean? I think Bellator is very close to having a beautiful crop of talent on the roster that they've developed along. So I think they're right there on the cusp. So we'll see how they can plot out their schedule and maybe their broadcast partners. So anyway, well, listen, new year, new decade. We're getting a little breather to start it off, right? Not a lot of events, but it gets rolling next week. UFC 246 is going to kick it off. And then
you're in Vegas.
Right here in Vegas, and it's just going to keep going. It's going to be crazy once again in 2020. And every week we'll sit right down here and make sense of it all on Spinning Backlick.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.